As Orlando grapples with downtown ordinances, we ask, what makes a thriving downtown? You're listening to The Wrap from Central Florida Public Media. I'm Brendan Byrne. The City of Orlando will hold a second public hearing on an ordinance meant to restrict where nightclubs can be located. City commissioners passed the ordinance during a meeting last week. They say the goal is to diversify the business downtown, bringing in more businesses that are open during the day and cater more to families. But does this approach undercut a more holistic model of economic success?
That's troubling, that the idea that the city seems to be reacting what it has perceived to be an immediate issue rather than seeing how bars and nightclubs and restaurants really fit into the patchwork of a successful downtown economy.
A look at what makes a thriving downtown through an economic lens. That's ahead on The Wrap, the big stories this week from Central Florida Public Media. But first, these headlines. The Pulse Memorial Advisory Committee met for the first meeting at the Kia Center in downtown Orlando to help guide the city towards a permanent memorial for the Pulse tragedy. Central Florida Public Media's Marion Summerall reports members of the board say it has been too long without a memorial.
In honor of the 49 lives taken, the City of Orlando selected 18 people to serve on the committee. Some of the members include survivors, families of those lost, and community leaders. The committee will meet monthly for the rest of the year and aims to choose a design and present it to the city by the end of the year. Brian Reagan, a survivor and a former manager at Pulse, is on the committee. He says he believes the committee will make sure this memorial is done properly and respectfully.
I think we truly have a chance at honoring the 49 with dignity, and I think that they deserve it, and we deserve it as a community.
The community is encouraged to attend these meetings and provide input for the committee on the design and concepts of the memorial. Marion Summerall, Central Florida Public Media.
High school athletes in Florida can now be paid for the use of their name, image, and likeness. The Florida Board of Education voted unanimously to approve the policy this week at their meeting in Orlando. That means students can make money off of commercial endorsements, promotional activities, social media presence, product or service advertisements. Board member Esther Bird says she still wants to see a registration database in order to keep track of the kids entering into those contracts in order to protect them and their families.
This board takes very seriously protecting our students, and thank you for taking that seriously as well. You have the full support of this board to do what needs to be done to make sure these bad actors don't start preying on our kids.
Under the rules, student-athletes can't profit off their high school's uniform, logo, mascot, or name. They're also banned from entering any contracts that would promote adult entertainment, vaping, marijuana, gambling, weapons, and political or social activism. After more than 50 days since launching from Cape Canaveral in Boeing's Starliner capsule, 2 NASA astronauts will remain on board the International Space Station until at least next month. Teams with NASA and Boeing continue to investigate 2 major issues with the vehicle, a helium leak and thrusters. NASA's Steve Stitch says that while there are other ways to get the astronauts home, bringing them back in Starliner is still the plan.
And that's our primary focus right now. We have contingency options. We've put those in play. NASA always has contingency options. We know a little bit of what those are, and we haven't worked on them a whole bunch, but we kind of know what those are. But right now we're really focused on bringing Butch and Sunny home on Starliner.
After a test this weekend of the thrusters, NASA and Boeing leaders will meet next week to discuss a return date for the crew. The mission was scheduled to last about 8 days. More Central Florida news stories on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. This is an election year. What local issues do you care about? What concerns you? Do you have questions about the process of voting? What about issues on the ballot? Well, Central Florida Public Media is listening. Your questions will help shape our election coverage this year. Let us know what you want to know. Click the green Let Us Know button under Vote 2024 at cfpublic.org. The City of Orlando recently adopted a new ordinance restricting where nightclubs can be located downtown. Commissioners say the goal is to diversify the downtown economy by bringing in more businesses open during the day and by catering more to families. But what does the thriving downtown look like from an economics perspective? Central Florida Public Media's Talia Blake caught up with Mark Dorison. He's a law professor and director of legal clinics at Florida A&M University's College of Law.
There have been a number of studies about this exact question: what makes a thriving downtown, from an economic development or a community development sense? And as you might imagine, there's a sort of a holistic approach to the kind of things that make sense. But some of the ones that urban planners and community-based development groups have looked at are things like having public gathering places, having benches and chairs where people can sit facing each other so they can interact. The big one that a lot of folks talk about is having public restrooms and access to water. All these things contribute to people being in downtown, staying in downtown longer, and engaging with the downtown economy more frequently. Some other things that have made a big difference are having businesses that are open at nights and weekends besides just restaurant and nightclubs. Some models that suggest what they call the third model, which is a third of businesses should be businesses where you purchase things. Another third should be places to eat and drink, restaurants and bars and coffee shops. And then overall, a third of the businesses should be open in the evenings and the weekends.
Based on what you just said, would you say the city of Orlando's approach to improving downtown is the best economic option?
What the city really needs is a holistic plan, a comprehensive plan. And I know that there have been various downtown development plans, but I think when we see piecemeal approaches like this ordinance, like the other restrictions that were imposed on nightclubs and bars last year about how late they could stay open, that kind of approach really undercuts the kind of holistic model that can bring the different pieces together. And that's troubling, that the idea that the city seems to be reacting what it has perceived to be an immediate issue rather than seeing how bars and nightclubs and restaurants really fit into the patchwork of a successful downtown economy.
Are there any cities getting it right? Are there any cities that have gotten this thriving downtown right?
I think there are. I think there are a number of cities that have implemented the kind of comprehensive redevelopment or a plan like I was talking about. Memphis is a good example. I think has gone a long way to really focusing on how to bring these pieces together to maximize the inherent economic potential of downtowns. In a study from Memphis, just for example, they realized just because of the density of the downtown, that 1 square mile of downtown generated more county and city tax revenue than 3 square miles in the county. And so the density that exists and the potential is great. And so one of the things that they focused on in Memphis was also, and this is something you see in a lot of successful downtowns, is more housing downtown and a greater variety of housing types, of price points. You need to have more people living downtown, having schools downtown, having access to childcare. Those are the kind of things that bring families downtown and begin to create the kind of synergies that help the economies of downtowns thrive.
Mark Dorson, thank you so much for talking with me today.
It was my pleasure. Great to see you.
That was FAMU's Law Director, Mark Dorson. For a more in-depth version of this conversation, visit cfpublic.org. That's it for The Wrap this week. This podcast is produced by Central Florida Public Media with assistance from News Director LaToya Dennis and Digital Director Ryan Ellison. I'm Brendan Byrne. This is The Wrap.